Bienvenidos and welcome to another High Ground movie review. I am joined by the one and only Tina Love.
Hello.
We've finally entered spooky season and therefore horror movies are being released left and right, much to my joy and Tina Love's dismay. Today we are taking a look at one of my most anticipated horror movies of the season, Smile.
Smile is directed and written and created basically by the same person, Parker Finn. He actually took a small short film and made it into a full-length film.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. A lot of horror movies start that way.
And so the Cinemark summary says, Sosie Bacon stars as Dr. Rose Cotter, whose unsettling experience with one patient stains her career and her personal relationships, and ultimately threatens to define her entire future.
Yeah, it very much surmises the information that you need to know, and I feel like that kind of shows all the movies that have been released recently when it comes to new type of horror, where it's best to know as little as possible when you're going to go watch these type of movies.
Totally.
Yeah, so I think with that keeping in the same spirit, for those who haven't watched the movies, we're going to do kind of like a little spoiler-free review right now, and we're kind of going to get into the spoiler territory a little bit later. So if you're looking more for the spoilers, please feel free to click forward to the number we've indicated below. So going back to kind of this high-level discussion here, man, the actors, and I think really the only actor or actress we need to talk about here is Sosie Bacon, because she carried this movie entirely, mostly because she's our main focal point. We see everything from her perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what makes her performance really great is the depth of her emotion and the emotions that we watch. Because this is a movie about, like, dread, fear, anxiety, you know? Like, it really goes into mental illness. And so the fact that, like, we saw all of that pain and just struggle in her face, she did an amazing job.
Yeah. And continuing to praise this whole entire movie, because it's a little tiny spoiler, we liked it.
We liked it, yeah.
Is the direction. It was just, it threw you from a loop from the beginning of the movie. They really know how to play onto your emotions and just how to make you uneasy, which I think plays very well into this whole theme of the movie and kind of what they're going for, that you just can't really trust what you're watching.
Right, yeah. Parker Finn really does a good job at taking every kind of element and just honing in on the effects you're supposed to feel, like the emotions. Because you're following the main character who's going through all of this as well. Yeah. So he uses, like, his entire palette. The camera, the music, you know, the actors. I think he directed really well, so that it showed all. A lot of
fun little Easter eggs in the background. I feel like he did that a lot too. So there's a lot to look forward to when you're watching this movie. And like you said, the music. There were some new sounds that I have never heard.
Yeah.
In this score.
And they were timed really weirdly, like the duration of them, like some of them were slow, like boom, and then others were super fast, so you kind of got a range of different sounds with different tools,
and each one just eerie, like it just made you again really the whole time it just felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest reason why you should go watch the movie, even if you're not a horror fan, is for the message that it's telling us, because it really goes in on mental health, mental illness. It goes in on the care industry right now and the hecticness, and like there's a lot more that it's saying than just the scary stuff.
Yeah,
which was really scary.
Which is nice to have in a horror movie, a deeper message, but you do have to sit through a pretty good horror movie. Like it's terrifying.
As someone who's seen a lot of scary movies, like was it scary to you? Because for me it was terrifying, since I'm not a scary movie fan.
I think it was a different type of scary. Like it wasn't that like, oh, I was just like, oh, that was too gory, or that was like, oh, look at that. Like it's just like there was a lot of jump scares, but that normally doesn't get me. But it was just the constant unease.
It was the psychological.
It was it was definitely and just like not really being able to know if what you saw you really saw. I think that really made it a good suspenseful, scary movie. So with that, I am giving this a really solid score. I'm giving this a good
And
8.
I agree with it.
A good 8 out of 10. Highly recommend that you go watch this movie. If you're not a horror fan, I'm not telling you to go watch it right away. I think if you can watch it in the morning before the rest of the day occurs, wait for a streaming platform.
At home under a blanket.
Exactly.
I highly recommend.
But if you are a true horror nut and love to go watch new types of movies and enjoy a new type of horror, I think Smile will do it for you. And so from here on out, we're going to be getting into kind of our favorite moments, our least favorite moments.
We're definitely talking spoilers.
Yeah, so be warned. This is your warning.
Yes, we're talking spoilers.
If you haven't seen the movie, please go check it out and then come back and listen to our spoilers. So I think we'll start off with our least favorite moments because we've been praising this movie for the last 6 minutes to try to get people to go watch it. But there are some noticeable dips, at least for myself, in the second act where there isn't really any horror sequences that are going on. I did start to feel the length of the movie just because it had been maybe like 15-20 minutes where a real good scare had occurred.
Okay, what part was that? Was it?
I think it was from the party up until where she was discovering everything.
Oh, the investigation.
The investigation part, yeah. Which, I mean, it was riveting because you were finding out more about like what this
being entity is what she ended up calling it. Dr. Rose.
So I think that was kind of just a lull. It was interesting, but it wasn't like captivating. It wasn't anything new. Like you kind of see it once they told you there was a slight pattern. You're like, oh, this probably goes on forever.
You could the beginning where we're introduced to her routine, like what she's actually doing, was also kind of done better in that way, where like. At least the movements of the camera, because there wasn't much going on, you know.
Yeah.
But we were still getting built up this eeriness based on what we were hearing and seeing with the camera and the motion.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of slow pans. It was so creepy. But when all of this investigation stuff, they could have probably dialed up the creepiness of what you're finding out, of what you're learning. Because in the screen, they're like trip the fuck out, you know? But I don't think as an audience we were necessarily right there with them.
Only 2 kills that happen in this movie, which I think is interesting. Like, it's a great way to subvert people's expectations, to use that type of Game of Thrones. Because from the trailers, which you're probably seeing in the background, it feels like this thing is killing the people around her from the trailers, and that's kind of what I expected, is that there's this being that just kills people around her and leaves them deformed, and that she was going to be the one that everybody put the blame on that we're dying.
Because the trailers make us think that it's something physically happening to these people, and that's not the case.
No.
We learn very quickly.
Yeah, very, very quickly, which is what I like, too. Like, it kind of set you on a different path right away, and they tried to warn you beforehand. So we're flipping this on its head. Like, this isn't what you expect it to be.
We're starting to talk about our likes. Was that all in terms of your dislikes?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was just that dip in the second act. I didn't like that I didn't like the first ending that I thought there was, like that it was the only ending, but then they corrected it with having that false ending and actually being really good.
It was weird. I mean, they obviously wanted you to feel some kind of hope, because I think as the character is portraying someone who's going through this mental state or mental illness, like they are looking for some type of hope, you know? And so when we're seeing people like that, like we're almost like at Joel's point of view at some point, in my opinion. Like, you want to help her, you know? But in the end...
Yeah. So, I think going into favorite moments, did you have one that kind of stayed with you? Although I know you had your hands over your eyes for most of the movie.
I have to tell the audience that I probably watched 30% of the movie and listened to 100% of it. I was not looking, and when I did, I looked just to see what was going on, and then I looked down again. I was like, nope, can't do this. So, based on what I saw, a lot of my favorite moments were build-up moments. I don't know, I guess because I just really appreciated the different style of movement in the camera. again, because like the battlefields ended up being rooms, you know. It's not like a whole arena or anything. It like ends up, it's a mind battlefield, and some of your most comfortable places, like your office, ends up being these battlefields. So it took the camera to show us your shit's about to go down in these rooms, and you fucking better know it.
Yeah.
Sorry for my cursing. So I like those moments, and obviously for me, none of it was the scary moments.
Because you didn't see it.
I wasn't watching. I was not watching.
For me, one of my favorite moments was the will they won't they show the actual entity, and I think they showed its final form after it had taken over Rose's body. Yeah, I think when it peeled off its human form and it was those like, multiple faces.
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't even say they were faces, but like just teeth.
All the smiles, like there were smiles in a row. And so yeah, I think that was the actual entity's like being, like how it looked and what takes over you. But what I loved about that was the use of prosthetics. Like, it looked like there was a real mask there, like a real, like, effect.
Yeah, I don't think they used any CG.
They did use a little bit of CG, obviously.
But on that, you're right.
Yeah, but on that, like, scene where it's just, like, a straight shot, like, it felt like it was a tangible thing that was there. Which I think this did a really fine line of having a lot of new ideas intertwined with a lot of like old school mentality, like the use of prosthetics.
Okay.
The use of it seemed like a lot of it was real blood. Some of the scenes that required blood.
Since I wasn't watching the screen much, I was listening to the sound and music a lot, and I'll just say that it added so much to the emotion that you were supposed to feel. Again, like this movie centered around really tough emotions like fear and anxiety and horror, suspense, right? And so it pulled through, and like you were saying earlier in our spoiler-free discussion, it was random tools, noises that you don't really hear in horror movies, in my opinion, because like it sometimes would mimic real sounds, like a drop of a pen type of sound, but then it would change it so it was a completely different sound, because that's what the character was experiencing. She was living in her reality, but then started, becoming the victim of this entity and didn't know what was reality.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she didn't know where her mind was or what was truth or what were lies. So I felt like the fact that it came through in the sound as well is pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, you could feel that she was just sleep deprived through what you were seeing, obviously, and just like what you were hearing too, because like you said, there's a lot of distortion, and you just were like, what's...
And some of the audio is what the entity was using against her as well. He would, whatever it would take the recording of what happened to her patient.
Yeah.
In that fucking moment where you heard it literally like 10 times. She played it over and over and over and over again. But the way the camera was like zooming in, and you knew that there was something off in the sound, you were anticipating something different. Yeah. And it completely changed. Yeah. Like I was so scared. That was another point where I looked down. And I was like,
Yeah, it was definitely a good time watching this movie. Had a nice meaning to it, but
it did. No, I mean, again, like it shows you what an ER could look like, because we're in her work for a good portion of the movie. Yeah. That they're understaffed, that their mental health isn't in its right place
or in a priority.
They're not funded well. Yeah. Like all of that is pointed out in the dialogue and stuff. So it's definitely saying something important, I feel, especially with trauma and mental illness, and that different people, deal with it in different ways, and the outcomes are all different too. You never know when your outcome could be good or when it could be really bad. And on that note, if you're experiencing trauma, mental illness, or need some mental health, need to take time for yourself, just remember that you're not alone, and you can seek help if you ever need to talk. Find those that love you, because there are people who love you.
Make sure to check the resources down below if you do need any help. And
Thanks for joining. I mean, we have a lot planned for the month because again, it's my king's favorite month for movies, spooky season. Hopefully you join us back on the channel. If you like this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe for all our next content, and share with your buds.